Good idea.
Come you can't!
Done. Not say.
An age. Ares.
Gone fishing. The world.
You've come to your domain!
Yes. The sons of...
You are that build the walls of Tartarus.
Father now seeks
Night.
my terms.
Trouble me! Aside! Come and get me! What are you waiting for? Tartarus.
We can't.
Normally.
But when I design...
You designed Tartarus.
Oh, are you inside? I can... You're not side in. So I had to leave. A human can travel through the under...
Cronus, we must have no end to this. Should be. When your precious human... It's oblivion. Percy.
Father.
You see, if you align these... Well, useful to a point. He's the one who taught me to navigate. Thing to do is don't talk. Navigator, this is the entry. Say one. You see? So you've got to control your... There it is. There's our door. Oh.
By choosing you.
Who prayed to you? I was always taught.
Equal.
Lucius! Lucius!
You sniveling!
Arena. All week.
He's fought. Admittedly trying to escape. Jump in.
Possibilities, this is the last thing you want to hear, but...
All this way. That way.
This way.
It's useless!
This way!
As it are! Get back!
Take the...
You're not real.
Percy!
Come on, let's go.
Hades, for having banished you.
Ask.
Hades, I know there is still... I won't let you. Use the power inside. Hades, come on.
Mantius, impressive.
Great Zeus. Cronus.
I was just...
How do you suppose you did that? Fight for your son. The hound that holds that spear left.
We have two. And Hades' pitchfork. Yeah. Here he is. Meet me at the temple of the... Prove to our father that you're... Yeah, I wasn't planning to.
Our batches.
Cover every part in. Help each other.
Phalanxes. And our job is to hold...
Dig it!
face unhurt him.
I want you to know. Father would go through for his son.
Brother.
10,000 years younger. Death.
So shall we finish this? Let's have some fun.
They've given us a chance.
Welcome to DP Action Channel. Please subscribe and press the bell icon. Wrath of the Titans was directed by Jonathan Liebesman. Darkness Falls, Halo, written by Dan Mazzone and David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. Orphan, Aquaman, and stars Sam Worthington. Clash of the Titans, Man on a Ledge, Rosamund Pike, Gone Girl, Jack Reacher, Topicable, Blood Myth, Kong, Skull Island, Edgar Ramirez, Bright, Point Break, Liam Neeson, Schindler's List, Cold Pursuit, Ralph Fiennes, Coriolanus, In Bruges, Bill Nighy, Pokemon, Detective Pikachu, Valkyrie, and Danny Houston. The Aviator, Angel Has Fallen. It's about a now-settled demigod being called into action when the gods of Olympus lose control of their monsters and once again threaten the lands with destruction. The plot: for those who complained about the lack of camp in the first installment of the supposed franchise, there's Wrath, which offers less attention to its narrative in service of its character moments and action sequences. It provides the adventure and some interesting decisions, but goes broader to less successful results. After settling down since the events previous, Perseus Worthington is informed by his father Zeus Neeson that the walls of Tartarus are falling after the gods have been receiving fewer prayers than ever, and Perseus will again have to pick up his sword and protect humanity. It's due to the waning influence of the gods that Hades finds an Ares Ramirez, son of Poseidon Houston, have made a nonsensical deal with Kronos to let him free to stay immortal, killing Poseidon and capturing Zeus to drain his powers. Perseus now must tread a similar journey and fight the armies of evil while amassing allies in the form of Andromeda, Puck, now in command of an army, and fellow demigod Agenor, Cabal, to enter Tartarus with Hephaestus, Nike, to collect the weapons of Zeus and Hades to stop Kronos' reawakening. While the plot is too similar for comfort, the journey there is made more interesting with those MacGuffins and the fact that Wrath of the Titans actually takes its adventure where it sets out to, showing some grandiosity to go with its stakes in ways that the first movie, and many other movies in general, refuse to, which is worth praising even if the story itself is bland. The characters, since most of the characters are already established, Wrath of the Titans can lean into developing the relationships more, which it does to a point, but the movie takes longer to bring itself to do so, whereas Clash was more effective with introductions and motivations. Perseus settled down after Clash with Io, but his wishes to live life as a man came with the price of continuing to witness death, this time Io being the recipient after birthing Helios. Perseus is a little older, a lot more experienced, more self-deprecating, and just as good in combat as ever. There are elements of his previous arc placed here that are accelerated with the pace, but the movie doesn't stop there and furthers his journey of discovering more about manhood and godliness that keeps things a little fresher than expected. Andromeda doesn't have the same dynamic with Perseus as Io. Instead of being a shepherd of sorts along with a romantic interest, she's kept in the heat of battle, a far cry from her royal position of the last movie that isn't explained in any great detail. Agenor, on the other hand, is a proper supporting character, given a shifty yet endearing quality to mask his insecurity about being an unknown demigod. He's not relegated to comedic relief though, with his father being a god. He's capable of impacting the story with his skill at navigation being logically integrated and his arc of confidence justified in a similar way to Perseus's from the first. Ares is, unfortunately, the least developed despite being the main antagonist for most of the runtime. He's naive to a fault and it's a trait, along with his obvious lust for war, that's never reasoned beyond being born that way. Zeus and Hades do get more shading with their fears of being forgotten, unleashing monsters ad nauseum to retain a feeling of power and the legacies they desire. Most of these characters are satisfying, but the flaccidity of Ares is a major problem. The action, perhaps in direct response to those who lamented the lack of traditional titans in a world-ending scenario in the first Titans, Wrath of the Titans ups the ante with more creatures, a vaster adventure, and a less human scale of threat that may have been a detriment if the movie elected not to keep said ante in the frame. A fight with the Chimera is the reintroduction to the world, and it's weaker and far less impactful than the intro of Clash, as is the death of the god Poseidon, creating a clunky and less coherent opening than desired. After these stumbles have been traversed, Wrath of the Titans has action on par with Clash, this time daring to do some battles differently and integrating the action and adventure similarly. Once the heroes have arrived on Hephaestus' island, Wrath of the Titans sets up a predator-esque forest full of traps and cyclopean guards only there for defense, backing down once they've been shown the hero's purpose. It's less memorable than the giant scorpions of Clash, but still a solid action scene. The traversal of the labyrinth of Tartarus is the highlight of the action, having a shifting maze that isn't limited to horizontal travel, with Hephaestus' design going vertical and changing the walls constantly while Perseus and company try to reach the center. The final battle is CG-laden, but it's well directed, designed, and has a culmination of all the plot elements of both films, ending on a high note. Wrath of the Titans action is dirtier and more brutal than the first, taking the movie to more interesting settings for its action, yet never surpassing the simple charm of the remake, though still good popcorn fun. The techniques, like the first, the scope is large, offering real locations mixed with fantasy and mythology to create a to-the-point actioner that's here to deliver spectacle reminiscent of times past. Wrath of the Titans is better from a physical and technological perspective, with even more, still impressive set design, and choreography. The major flaw is that the details aren't as fleshed out compared to the already Spartan original despite its simplicity. It's still a technical marvel but doesn't stick its landing thanks to weaker characters and desire for a scale that at times loses sight of its characters. Wrath of the Titans is a satisfying and enjoyable fantasy actioner with a retreaded story and a weak antagonistic motivation and, generally, weaker characters, yet its better production facets, further willingness to embrace the brutality of its premise, and campier tone allow for another fun, though less memorable sword and sandals epic. Maybe it was the 3 exploding mountains too many, or the dozen surplus fireballs, or too much noise. Wrath of the Titans relentlessly wore me down with special effects so overscale compared to the characters and the film that at times the only thing to do was grin. The characters, to be sure, are gods and not humans, but they are human-sized gods. Give it a moment's thought. What chance does your average muscular god have against the grinding stones of a labyrinth as large as a volcano? But hold on a second. Why, you may be wondering, are the Titans feeling wrathful? The seeds of their present discontent can be traced back a decade or 2 years in movie time to the events related in Clash of the Titans, 2010, where Perseus Sam Worthington defeated the Kraken and hopefully retired to raise his young son. Perseus, you may recall, is a demigod, the son of Zeus, Liam Neeson, and a human mother. Or maybe you don't recall. Anyway, Perseus' retirement is not meant to be, because there is a crisis in the world of the gods. Humans are losing their faith in them, and the gods, no matter what you may have been led to believe, depend for their power on the faith of those who believe in them. I was reminded of Tinker Bell, and toyed with the notion of Perseus turning to the audience and asking, "Do you believe in gods?" Perseus, in any event, is not very fond of Zeus, who did, after all, rape his mother. But the time has come to take a larger view. Zeus is being held prisoner by Hades, Ralph Fiennes, who hopes to usurp his power. Now Perseus must journey to the underground to rescue his father, restore his power and prevent Hades from ruling civilization. This he and his team must do by negotiating a labyrinth and descent to Tartarus. The labyrinth scene isn't bad. This phenomenon was built from the outside in, we learn, leaving only one escape route. It consists of an unimaginably massive maze of enormous rocks, arranged like a clockwork mechanism so that its elements grind and shift and change forms. The stones indeed seem to be able to sense where the gods are and toy with them. It is frankly impossible to see how the human-sized gods have half a chance in its bowels, especially since exits become dead ends, narrow corridors begin to crush in upon them, and so on. If you were to quiz me on how they escape, I would be puzzled. They just found their way out, I guess. But never mind. Wrath of the Titans is obviously not concerned with plausibility. It lacks a comprehensible story, and you won't need your cliff notes on the Greek myths. You get an idea of who the major players are, and then they spend a modest amount of time shouting laughable dialogue at one another while being all but forced off the screen by special effects. Forced off the screen by special effect. That's where the fireballs and exploding mountains come in. No attempt is made to achieve a consistent physical scale in the movie, nor a comprehensible spatial plan. I was never quite sure where anybody or anything was in relationship to anything else, and eventually I gave up trying. This is a montage of sweaty, dirty, bloodied faces and figures assembled to fit between balls of fire. I should have added that the movie is in 3D. This is not a help. Wrath of the Titans is to begin with a dusty, murky pictorial confusion, not helped by dim underworld scenes, and although I'm sure the focus must be excellent, it had an imprecise feeling to me. Then the 3D glasses did their bit to reduce the light level from the screen, and unlimited clouds of smoke, dust and sand were generated by the explosions, and finally I found myself wondering, just for the heck of it, how the movie might have played with a more traditional approach. You know, literate, concise dialogue. Characters we care about, with relationships that have meaning for us. Action set pieces within well-established spatial boundaries. Pacing that doesn't hurtle past us faster than the human ability to develop interest. You know, that kind of stuff. Synopsis: 10 years after he defeated the Kraken, Perseus Sam Worthington, the demigod son of Zeus Liam Neeson, now lives as a fisherman with his 10-year-old son, Helios, John Bell. One night, Perseus is visited by Zeus, who tells him that the powers of the gods are fading and the walls of the underworld prison of Tartarus are breaking due to the lack of devotion from humans, and states they will need the world's armies to combat the potential threat, but Perseus shows little interest and refuses to get involved. Afterwards, Zeus travels to Tartarus to meet with his brothers Hades, Ralph Fiennes, and Poseidon, Danny Houston, and his son Ares, Edgar Ramirez. He tells Hades they must forget the past and unite to rebuild Tartarus, but Hades orders his minions to attack. They severely injure Poseidon, and Ares betrays Zeus over showing Perseus more affection, taking him prisoner and stealing his thunderbolt. Hades and Ares plan to drain Zeus' power to revive Kronos, the father of Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, in exchange for the two to remain immortal. The walls of Tartarus break, unleashing monsters into the world. After slaying a chimera that attacks his village, Perseus takes Helios to the Mount of Idols, so they can speak to Zeus, but the dying Poseidon arrives instead. He informs Perseus that Hades and Ares are holding Zeus in Tartarus, and tells him to meet with his demigod son Agenor to find the fallen god Hephaestus, who knows the way into Tartarus. Poseidon then gives Perseus his trident before succumbing to his injuries and crumbling into dust. Perseus flies on Pegasus to the campsite of Queen Andromeda's army. Andromeda throws the moonpie has imprisoned Agenor for stealing crown jewels, but Perseus has him released. Perseus, Andromeda, Agenor, and a group of soldiers set out at sea to find Hephaestus, with Agenor explaining that Hephaestus created the three great weapons that Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon wield, Zeus' thunderbolt, Hades' pitchfork, and Poseidon's trident, and that together they form the Spear of Triumph, the only weapon that can defeat Kronos. Agenor uses Poseidon's trident to direct the boat to Hephaestus's island, where they encounter three Cyclops who attack them. When Perseus shows them the trident, they lead the group to Hephaestus, Bilnigi, the smith god, stripped of much of his godly power after siding with Hades after he betrayed the Olympians 10 years prior. He explains that he has a map to navigate the path into Tartarus. He leads them to the door into the labyrinth, where they are attacked by Ares after Carina prays to him. Ares kills most of the soldiers as well as Carina while Hephaestus opens the door, before he sacrifices himself so that Perseus, Andromeda, and Agenor can enter the door before it closes. Agenor tries to use the map to direct them, but the labyrinth continually shifts and at one point nearly crushes them. Perseus gets cut off from the group and encounters and kills the Minotaur. Eventually, the group manages to reunite outside of Tartarus. Meanwhile, Zeus has been almost entirely drained of power as Kronos starts to awaken. Zeus apologizes to Hades and asks his forgiveness, as he has forgiven Hades for his actions. Hades has a change of heart and finally decides to help Zeus and stop Kronos, but Ares intervenes. Perseus arrives and uses the trident to free Zeus. As they are escaping, Ares throws Hades' pitchfork into Zeus's back. Perseus, Andromeda, Agenor and Hades carry a weakened Zeus down to the base of the mountain where Andromeda's army is gathered. Perseus combines the trident and Hades' pitchfork, but he still needs Zeus's thunderbolt, which Ares still has, to complete the spear. Perseus prays to Ares, challenging him to a fight at the Temple of Gods, which Ares accepts. At the temple, Perseus finds out Ares has kidnapped Helios, who was brought to watch Perseus die. Ares easily overpowers Perseus, but he is distracted when Helios tries to challenge him by pointing a sword at him, giving Perseus the opportunity to defeat him. Perseus then destroys Ares with Zeus's thunderbolt and combines the god's weapons into the Spear of Triumph. Meanwhile, Andromeda's army is overwhelmed by Kronos' army of Magi, but Hades arrives to revive Zeus, and together they use what power they have left to defeat the army, who have murdered most of Andromeda's men. Kronos then appears and begins to attack them, from which Zeus and Hades defend them and at the same time are giving Perseus the opportunity to fly right down Kronos' throat. Kronos lets out one last blast, and Zeus takes the brunt of the force to protect Hades. Perseus throws the Spear of Triumph into Kronos' stomach, destroying him once and for all. Perseus meets with Zeus and Hades, Zeus commends Perseus for his courage, stating that the time of the gods is over before turning to dust. Hades is now mortal, though he states he might be better off as such before walking away. Perseus reunites with Andromeda and kisses her. Knowing that there are still titans to battle, Perseus decides to train Helios to be a soldier. Thanks for watching.